Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting. My name is Craig Maladra. I'm one of the aldermen from the 5th Ward. I serve with my partner, Bob Swanson. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I would like to ask your indulgence to honor the life of Gigi Kimball. Gigi was a 28-year educator in Geneva, and if you think about how many students' lives she touched in her career, it's got to easily be thousands. And for that reason, among others, we mourn her loss and celebrate her life. The flag is at half-staff, and if we could begin tonight with a moment of silence, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. Diving into the agenda. Item 2, approve Committee of the Whole minutes from March 11th. Do I have a motion? Swanson, second? Second. Mike. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. The city attorney reminded me that I skipped a step. All aldermen, save for Alderman Radecki, are present tonight. And McGowan. Okay, can we rewind and just start over entirely?
You're good.
Item 3A. Consider suspending the rules to allow Alderman Maladra to chair this meeting and vote on all action items on this agenda.
Second.
Clemens, Alderman Bruno, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Dodge a bullet. Item 3B, oath of office for police officer Cantrell Priest. I'll turn this over to Mayor Burns. You'll enjoy this.
Mr. Priest, may I trouble you to join us at the podium? And just for your own safety and security, Chief Passarelli, join him as well. Oh, yeah, that is kind of a tough. Yeah. I had the honor of meeting Quantrell earlier this evening, and you have quite the adoring fan club with you tonight, too. Would you like to introduce your guests this evening?
Yeah, we have my father, retired officer, Corey
Now,
Cooper.
hold on. 28 years as a sergeant.
Yes.
Pretty impressive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have my mother here, lovely mother here. Hi. And then family friend here, Sonia Horn. Been around for as long as I can remember.
Now, as I understand it, and is it correct to refer to this young lady as commander, correct?
Yes.
A retired commander, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Man, we have got the blue bloods in the room tonight. And you're following in the footsteps.
Yes, I am.
Well, Quantrell Germain Priest,
Yes.
how many of you in the room watched any part of the Shamrock Shuffle yesterday? 23,000 runners in the Shamrock Shuffle, the largest ever. Best times ever yesterday. And lo and behold, following the race, they wanted to interview one young man who ran, and it was you.
Yes.
All over the television. Mm-hmm. Our phones were lighting up. Do you recall what you said about that race?
This is a lot of work for a free banana.
A lot of work for a free, and a beer, I believe you said.
Yes.
Yes. Don't forget the beer there, Quantrell.
Yes.
So you're a runner.
I am.
How was your time yesterday?
A little under 40 minutes. So slower than usual, but
Is that so? Not your personal best.
no.
Good course though.
Yeah, it was great.
And how many miles did you run?
5.
Wow. You know the chief ran that race.
Oh, no, he didn't.
I think he lapped you a couple times.
So fast.
You have one brother and one sister?
Yes.
Older or younger?
Both younger.
Both young. Oh, so you're the oldest.
I am.
Born and raised in Maywood, Illinois. OPRF High School, man.
Yes.
Were you there for the new turf or were you there the old turf?
The old turf, sir.
The old turf. What do you make of that new turf?
I haven't been on it, so I can't really speak on it, but looks nice.
Would you have had a better time if you were on the new turf?
Probably.
Probably.
Yes. The right spikes.
And what did you do in high school? Athletically, academically, all that good stuff?
I ran track and I played football.
Yeah?
Yes.
What position in football?
Defensive back.
Really?
Yes.
And track, what was your specialty?
The 100 and the high jump.
And what was your best time in the 100?
I believe it was 10-9.
Wow. And was it a 200-meter high jump or?
What did I do? 6'4" in the high jump?
Oh, I'm sorry, high jump. What was I thinking? I was
Nah,
thinking
200 meters.
I was thinking high hurdles, man.
No, sir.
Sorry, but 6'4" in the high jump?
Yes.
You know, I was a track guy myself. Now, according to this cheat sheet, yeah, that was the low hurdles, yeah. Mostly academic. Working out, watching television. How do those two combine, Quantrell?
Well, you can get on a bike and still watch TV, so you can combine the two. Kill a lot of time that way.
Do you work out every day?
I try to.
Do you? Hang out with friends and family. And what do you do when you hang out with your friends?
We watch sports mostly, or we go work out.
I sense a trend here. You know, there's no TVs at the police station.
That's fine.
What's your favorite sport?
Football.
It is.
Yes.
Why?
Probably it's like I'm a big fan of the coaching more so than the actual hitting per se. It's like a chess match, you know, watching Bill Belichick and his defensive schemes go to work.
Now, why would you mention Bill Belichick?
It's my team, sir.
You just had a player retire today, didn't you?
Yes, Gronk.
Yeah, Gronk retired after what, 9 years?
9 years.
Did he give a reason? Just he's had enough kind of thing?
You know, he's kind of like the automobile that you keep locked up, and it's just time to put him away for good, you know. A lot of injuries, so it's time.
You know, Gronk's a big fan of this council proceeding, so he might be. And if you were a car, what car would you be?
A G-Wagon.
What's a G-Wagon?
It's a Mercedes-Benz truck.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
You know, later on in the meeting, we're actually considering purchasing one of those for the police station.
Oh, it'd be wonderful. I would love to
Isn't it?
test drive that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chevette. That's what we're. Do you know what a Chevette is?
I do not.
I think you're showing your age.
Yeah, I know, I'm showing my age. Sorry about that. Previous professional positions. This is pretty cool, man. Special education teacher at Joseph Academy.
Yes.
Passion of yours, working with kids?
Yes, I love kids.
Why special education?
You can do more. Those are the kids that need the most, and they get the least amount of help and resources. So, just doing my part.
That's pretty cool, man. Why Geneva?
I love the area. I was telling the chief when we were talking, when I come around and visit, had a friend who grew up here. When I come and visit, you know, the community's tight-knit, and you would see that there's not, in other towns, not to name any, you'll see there's an apprehension between the law enforcement officers and the citizens of the community. There's like a sense of distrust. You don't really get a sense of that. Obviously, I don't live here, so I can't speak on it. I can only speak on what I've seen, and just the relationship that you see between the citizens and the officers is it's just welcoming. It's welcome change to what you see a lot of times, especially in the tumultuous times that we live in. So,
And why police work?
I wanted to stay in public service when I was done with teaching. Just felt like a natural fit. I still wanted to help, you know, do some good in the world.
Absolutely. You like to be called Trell.
Yeah, I have a lot of nicknames.
Okay,
that's
hold on.
probably the most common.
Okay, what's the uncommon nickname?
Wow, a lot. So a lot of people call me Priest. A lot of people call me QT. You know, some people call me, you know, Kwani. I mean, it just depends on the person. Yes.
What'd your dad call you?
They call me Jermaine.
Oh, really?
Yes, everyone in my family calls me Jermaine, actually.
Why is that?
I'm not sure. You would have to ask them.
Well, yes, it's not Jermaine. He said it. Very good. Is Jermaine a family name, sir? It is. Wow. So there's folks tuning in tonight, as you undoubtedly know.
Yes.
And they'll tune in throughout the week. What message do you want to convey to those who are looking at you as an example of what they might want to be when they grow up?
Well, the obvious, work hard, follow your dreams. But also that I'm here to help, and anything I can do to help anyone, don't hesitate to ask. I'm like an open book. You need anything, if I can help in any way, within my power, I'll do the best that I can.
Would you be comfortable sharing your cell phone number now?
Well, since I don't have to answer it, that's more than fine.
So, Jermaine, anything else you'd like to say?
No, I'm just looking forward to getting through the academy and joining the force. Looking forward to it.
It's going to be exciting. So all 7, or not, it's not all 7 days of Swedish Days, it's all whatever days of Swedish Days is here.
Yeah.
You're familiar with all the festivals and all the excitement that goes on in this community?
I know a little something. Probably do a little more research and get it
Yeah.
more acclimated to it. Looking forward to it all, though.
Well, you're joining a great team.
I believe so.
Any questions or comments from the council? Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
I invite you to invite whomever you'd like to join you as we administer the oath.
All right, sounds
Okay.
good. I'd like parents and family friend to join me here. They've been supporting me through it all.
We're going to hang out up here so we get the seal behind you. How's that? Commander? I'm so nervous. Commanders and sergeants. Oh my God. Who's that guy with the camera? You guys look like you're all, what are you, nervous? Okay. Quantrell, you ready? I am, sir. Okay. I kindly ask that you raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Sir.
I, Quantrell Priest,
I, Quantrell Priest,
having been appointed to the position of police officer
having been appointed to the position of police officer
in the city of Geneva,
in the city of Geneva,
county of Kane,
county of Kane,
aforesaid,
aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Geneva Code of Ordinances,
the Geneva Code of Ordinance,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the position of police officer
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, sir. Good job. We're honored to have you. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. Okay? Congratulations, Dad. That was Jermaine. That was a good one. Be good. Oops, I'm sorry, man.
Montreal, congratulations.
Welcome aboard.
How we do. All right, moving on. Item 3C. Consider a draft resolution authorizing acceptance of a proposal to bind coverage for property, inland marine, general liability, automobile, employment practices, law enforcement, public officials, cybercrime, excess liability, and workers' compensation insurance coverage, effective May 1st, 2019. The City Administrator Dawkins will explain that. Motion first.
So moved.
Second.
All right, the city's commercial insurance packages are set to expire April 30th. The memorandum from Arthur J. Gallagher Risk Management Services, Inc., which was included in your packet, outlined the renewal proposal for these coverages. New this year is a proposal to move the city's property and inland marine coverage to Liberty Mutual. This change will allow the cities to realize a savings of 11.4% or $64,426 with no change in coverage terms or conditions. So this evening, we have Assistant City Administrator McCready and Tian Carrero from Arthur J. Gallagher are both here tonight to present, answer any questions you might have about the package.
Any questions? Alderman Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just am curious what's covered by cyber liability, if you could elaborate on that.
Sure. So
Thanks.
that's going to protect all of your cyber data. So anything that's stored on your servers, as well as hard data. So it's usually private information that can be used in the black market space. That type of stuff. It will cover extortion. So if you came in one day and all the city's files were locked and they were asking for X amount of bitcoins, it'll cover that type of loss. It also will cover if you receive an email pretending to be somebody else and it looks like it came from the city, a city employee, and there's a loss of funds from that as well. So all of those sorts of things fall within the cyber liability policy.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
Well, thanks for having me.
Item 3D, consider a draft resolution authorizing execution of a contract with National Soil Testing in the amount of $25,122 for 2019 construction material testing and geotechnical services. Do I have a motion? So moved. Alderman Marks, a second.
Second.
Over.
Okay, this is a contract for the testing of construction materials for quality assurance before these materials are incorporated into city projects. It also includes the testing of existing soils and construction debris for the presence of contaminants and such that appropriate management practices can be employed before spoils are removed from the construction site and be disposed of. This project did go out for bid. There were 5 quotes received. National Soil Testing LLC submitted the lowest quote. They have also done this type of work for the city in the past and have performed satisfactory. Tonight, we have Assistant Public Works Director Schreiber and Public Works Babica present in case there are any additional questions.
And do we have any questions? Okay, no questions from the council? No. Any questions from the audience? All right. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Item 3E, consider draft resolution authorizing execution of a contract with Strata Construction in an amount not to exceed $50,000 for 2019 sidewalk and curb maintenance project. Motion? So moved. Marks, a second.
Second.
Thank you. So this project entails the removal and replacement of defective sidewalks, curbs, and curb ramps on various city streets. We received 6 bids. Strata Construction Company was the low bid. Again, Strata Construction Company has done work for the city in the past and have performed satisfactorily. Again, I still have Assistant Public Works Director Brian Schreiber here to answer any questions, or Director Babica.
Okay, any questions from the committee? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Folks, that brings us down to item 4, new business and public comment. Do we have any new business from the committee? Okay, no new business from the committee. Any new business from the audience? All right, easy night. Do we have a motion to adjourn committee of the whole meeting? So moved by Marks, a second.
Second.
Michael, all in favor of adjournment? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that ends the committee of the whole meeting. Thank you very much. We'll take a short recess and then we'll reconvene as a Board of Appeals. Thank you.
Without objection, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Appeals to order, and I kindly ask our recording secretary to please take the roll call.
Mike Bruno.
Here.
Tara Burkhart.
Here.
Michael Clements.
Here.
Becky Ruby. Dean Kilberg.
Here.
Craig Maladra. Richard Marks.
Here.
Robert Swanson.
Here. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to turn this over to our city attorney for some introductory remarks. Mr. Sandak.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. You're sitting now as a Board of Appeal. We've talked in the past how the council has usually quasi legislative and ordinance writing powers. Tonight and right now, you're sitting basically in a quasi judicial manner. Before you is a petition to appeal a city staff determination, and with that, we're going to have a process that will have staff and the appealing party present. We'll hear public comments, if any, and then obviously comments from the council with respect to the item at hand. I would encourage you to be mindful that it is with respect to this petition only. The process that ensues will be with respect to this matter. No precedent will be set. This is only applicable in the instance before you. You have an up or down vote. It either makes, you either say yes, the appeal is granted, or it's denied. I will say that staff and the appellant have been working for quite some time, and for all intents and purposes, this is a stipulation. But the city staff can do nothing unless this board says it's okay to deviate from the code, according to and in the circumstances presented. Any questions? It's the appellant, it's staff and the appellant's show now.
Okay, for clarification, would you like me to read the matter? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a hearing of the appeal of the fire code officials and building code officials' decision that the proposed occupancy of the beer cellar at 204 West State Street, Geneva, Illinois, 60134, is a change of occupancy classification requiring the installation of an automatic fire suppression system. That is the matter before us this evening. We invite Attorney Mr. Finson to the podium.
Sorry, I said I wasn't going to speak, not to confuse. I am one of the city's attorneys, and I've been working on this. The one thing that I wanted to clarify, that Alderman Sandak, sorry, that Attorney Sandak had mentioned is the standard of review tonight. So the standard of review, give me 1 second so I read it correctly, and the basis for the appeal is that appeals may be taken by any person aggrieved by any decision or interpretation of the fire code official made under the provisions of this code. Application for appeals shall be based on a claim, and in this case, that an equal or better fire protection method is proposed. And so it's with that the parties, that's what the basis for the appeal is, but it's with that we've been negotiating with the applicant, and that's what we have a stipulation with respect to. But just so there are other bases for appeal, it's not just because you like it or you don't like it, it is whether or not this standard is met. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Kathleen, staff person that was leading this.
Thank you.
So I'd like to begin with just giving you a little background of how we got here today. So Economic Development began working with Dave Hawley of the Beer Cellar almost a year ago. And he was reviewing lease options for locations for a new store in Geneva. Beer Cellar's principal place of business is in Glen Ellen. So the search focused on the vacant retail space at 204 West State Street. The building is owned by DPC Holdings. Dean Corser is the former owner of Board Sports Unlimited, and that was a use that was classified as mercantile or commonly known as retail. The building is constructed in 1868. It's 2 stories with a basement. So the owner and the tenant began negotiating a lease for the first floor and the basement space based on a 10-year term, and also the owner completing a portion of the needed improvements. As part of their diligence, they submitted a floor plan to the city for the leased space. And the floor plan depicted an occupant load of 74 people for the leased space, with a first floor occupancy load of 64 people and a basement occupant load of 10. Beer Cellar's primary use of the leased space will be to sell packaged craft beer. As a secondary use, customers are provided an opportunity to taste a rotating selection of beers on tap. The building code official and the fire code official determined that pursuant to the city code, the proposed occupancy was a change of occupancy classification requiring the installation of an automatic fire suppression system in the building. In consideration of the floor plan and the proposed occupancy, as this is a hybrid use, it's a retailer that also has assembly, the architect started to propose a alternative fire method and to see if the city would consider an alternative fire method in consideration of the floor plan and the way that the occupancy would be set up. So the proposed alternative fire method is delineated in the packet, but mainly it includes the installation of the fire alarm and defined uses of space and agreement about how that space will be used and maintained throughout the use existence. So we recommended, the city looked at that, the city worked to negotiate that, and there was agreement to those terms between the city and the code officials. And the city, we actually recommended that they file the appeal based on these agreed upon terms, because although city staff supports the alternative method, staff does not have the legal authority to allow the proposed fire prevention method to be substituted for the automatic fire alarm, the fire suppression system. So this authority, as Attorney Sandak said, is given to the Board of Appeals, composed of this body. So this body can grant the release if they determine that what is proposed is equally good or better for the use specific to this use. It is a very specific finding for this exact retailer in this exact use in this exact configuration. So we did encourage the appeal, as I said earlier. So Beer Cellar did submit an appeal on March 15th. And within that appeal, their architect asserts that given the floor area and the proposed occupancy, the fire prevention method as provided, or as proposed, will provide the equally good or better fire protection. So the appeal has been reviewed, and it has the opinion of the building code official and the fire code official that the proposed method is acceptable alternative given the conditions that exist in the specifics in this case. So the other staff members also have worked on this and approve it, are recommending in favor of it, and that would be the city administrator, community development director, so the fire department, the fire chief. So it has really been a group effort to try to bring forward a solution that we believe is reasonable and will provide the best protection given the circumstance. We have the architect for the project here, and he can speak more specifically to code issues and answer any questions you have related to the code.
Hello, everyone.
One moment, sir.
sure.
Alderman Malater, do you, yeah, we're gonna turn to the public first, then, okay.
Oh.
If I could trouble you just to share your name?
Yeah,
For the
sure.
record.
My name is Stephen Shatswell. I'm an architect with Valeria DeWalt Train, architect of record for the project.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Floor is yours, sir.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to maybe touch on the handful of points that sort of delineate our, the cause for the appeal and the thought process behind my, approach as a professional in contending that the life safety considerations for the use of this building is equal or better than providing a fully automated sprinkler system. So if you look at the code itself, the City of Geneva has adopted an amendment that basically when you change the use of a space to something that's considered more hazardous, in this case, there is an element of the space that will be considered assembly. That kind of requires you to install a fully automatic sprinkler or fire suppression system. The base code itself also speaks on this matter. The 2009 International Building Code identifies 5 different types of assembly groups. If you look at what the proposed use is, which would be A2, that covers things like taverns and the like. So we're considering for a small portion of the floor plan, we could probably say that we're an A2 occupancy. With an A2 occupancy in the base code, we do not trigger any of the immediate qualifications for including a fire suppression system. So those primary qualifications are that our floor plan would exceed 5,000 square feet. We do not. The main floor is under 2,000 square feet, or just over 2,000 square feet, and the basement, which would remain unoccupied, makes up the additional 2,000 or so square feet of the space. The occupancy load needs to be less than 100 people, and our proposed occupancy for the main floor is only 64. And then the egress on the main level needs to be at grade or on the same level as the proposed use, which is the case for the beer cellar. Additionally, I'd like to propose that there are several precedent stores in and around Chicagoland, primarily the example of the beer cellar in Glen Ellen, which was built in 2016. Glen Ellen has also adopted the 2009 International Building Code, and found that the change of use, it was previously also an unused retail space. The change of use to having an assembly occupancy, they allowed us to build that space out with an automatic fire detection system and smoke detector, or a manual fire alarm pole and a automatic smoke detector system that then also had a communication center that would alert officials in the case of a fire. And then secondarily, doing a number of these types of projects. They're called slashy stores in the industry, but it's basically where you can buy, alcoholic beverages, but also have the opportunity to taste. There are a number of stores that we've done. One is the Beer Temple in Chicago. That was a new ground-up building. We actually had to go through a similar appeals process to appeal the code decisions of the Chicago building officials to allow us to build a similar store, actually quite a bit bigger, without the use of an automatic sprinkler system. And then additionally, we've done a number of tap rooms for small breweries and things of the like, where it's similar assembly type spaces. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with kind of what this type of a store might look like. And again, so another shop in Evanston, we've done a similar size shop. So I think there's precedent. And then lastly, I think just talking about the space itself, to describe to you basically what the store is going to look like and function as, and then in the spirit of the code to make the point or contend the point that a smoke detector and manual pull system would be just as effective in life safety considerations as a fully automated sprinkler system. So the proposed shop, it's one large open space. Partly that's from kind of security concerns, not wanting any kind of dead-end aisles. It'll be large and open. You can see in the floor plans that all of the retail shelving and cold storage is around the perimeter. And then it's a large open space that's sort of has a single center point where the tasting bar would be, and then the point of sale. There are a couple of small seating areas around in various corners of the store, but for the most part, the tasting bar is standing only. There aren't any stools or any kind of things that might be falling over in the case of emergency if people are trying to make, a quick exit out of the space. The use of the space itself, there aren't really any hazardous activities that would be going on. There's no food being prepared. Any food that would be sold would be prepackaged. And then the The lighting and the layout of the space itself, it'd be well lit. It's not really meant to be kind of a, dimly lit cocktail lounge or anything like that. Again, it's retail and tasting. And then, yeah, just the nature of it being a large open space. No matter where you are in the room, you're going to have direct visual access to the main exit, or the primary entrance exit, the front of the store. And then any other requirements as far as signage and emergency lighting will be provided as we would do with any other, assembly space. So there would be a second means of egress outside of the back of the building. In the event of power loss or anything like that, egress paths would be illuminated, and exit signs that would be battery powered would, should the front exit be blocked, you could still get out of the building. And then lastly, as Kathleen mentioned, we have been working with the fire department and the Department of Planning to kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page. What you see as far as the stipulations, which are found earlier in the packet, but also I relisted them here in our appeal, I think of that as kind of a memorializing of the agreement of how the space is going to be used. And some of the things I described just now, along with a couple of other, more specifics, can be found here. And between, this as an agreement between the owner and the fire department, and then along with the precedents and the things I've mentioned about the spirit of the code and what we're trying to do here, I'd like to make the appeal. And if you have any questions for me or would like me to go further into any of these issues, I'd be happy to.
Is there anyone else who's going to speak after you, sir, with your team?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Then I would like to open it up to questions from anyone joining us here this evening who might have questions for either the architect, the economic development director, or members of the Board of Appeals. Seeing none, hearing none, from the dais. Alderman Maladra?
I was just trying to get at sort of what our intent is with our code, the way it's drafted, and what caused this change in use. So I don't know if my question is for you, Stephen, or for our staff. What is it about assembly, particularly in this case, that makes the use very different than mercantile?
So typically when you're looking at how the code describes the use of a space, generally the spirit of the code is primarily interested in life safety. And the most hazardous in that sense tends to be assembly, because that's where you're going to have the most people spending time in, potentially more dense conditions. And should there be the case of an emergency, perhaps there's more potential for, obstacles or hazards in getting out of the space. And a lot of that shows up in when you're doing occupancy load counts. It's also a means by which you calculate or estimate the number of people that'll be in a space. So with a mercantile space, for example, the code stipulates that you calculate each person taking up 100 square feet. So if you have 1,000 square feet, you figure there'll be about 10 people in there. If you have standing room only, assembly space, that goes all the way down to, 7 square feet per person. So it basically, Kathleen, maybe you can speak if I'm wrong, but the spirit of the way that I read the amendment to the code is basically just kind of going above and beyond the initial direction given by the International Building Code. Just kind of saying, okay, perhaps we have older buildings that need to be updated. Perhaps, if we're changing a use of a it's been a blueprinting shop for 30 years, and now we're putting a bar in there. Maybe we should have some special considerations for this new use, which is more hazardous, meaning that there are more people that could potentially be affected by an emergency. So I think that's the spirit of the code and the spirit of the amendment. And that's really, it's kind of a blanket application to any change of use, kind of kicks you up into.
But so I was just wondering about the assembly here. So you've got space for how many people to stand and taste beer?
Yeah, so if you look at page, I don't know if there are page numbers on here, but it's towards the back of the packet. You can kind of see the various assembly spaces and storage spaces and retail spaces marked out. And associated with each of these is kind of what I mentioned, where there's a square foot per occupant identified. And that's all laid out in the code as far as how a space is used. And really, that's just driving us getting a total overall occupant load count for the floor. So the idea here is that primarily assembly space is around the standing bar, which is the most kind of dense, if you will, and then the various seating areas. All of that is considered when we're giving an overall load for the floor plan.
Okay.
So even though there'll be a lot of open space in the bar, or in the shop rather, we're not deriving our occupancy load by assuming that we're gonna just pack this full of people. It's kind of taking a reasonable approach to, all right, if the bar is completely full with 25 people, you've got another 6 or 8 people here and there, 10 people here and there, a few people that are buying bottles from the shop. That's where we're getting our number. So I hope that answered your question.
Well, it helps, yeah, it actually gets to my point. I don't see this as being the same type of assembly as a bar. It's
Right.
just totally different. So that's basically where I was heading with that.
Mm-hmm.
My next question then has to do with what are the differences between suppression and prevention? So we're saying that what we're proposing here is as good as or better, but then I'm wondering if they're not just different. So what is a suppression system and what is a prevention system, and how are they different?
Sure. So a prevention and fire suppression. Suppression tends to be an active term as far as, think of a sprinkler system, or, if you have grease fires, you have special fire retardants that might be deployed. So that's kind of a general term for active fire suppression. Fire prevention tends to do more with construction materials, combustibility, certain different areas of the building code dictate what you can build things out of, and how flammable they are, how much smoke they put off if they were to catch on fire. And so when we talk about fire prevention, we're going to be meeting all of the basic standards for construction as far as materials that we're going to be using, and the materials that be allowed for a building of this type. I think you could probably also categorize a smoke detecting system and a manual fire pole as a type of suppression. Even though you're not actively putting out a fire, you're suppressing the negative potential results if something were to be smoking, or, I think it all kind of gets back to the spirit of the code, which is life safety and preventing, any potential loss of life or injury in the case of an emergency. And so it's kind of at that point, or at that, with that spirit that we're proposing, that having a sprinkler or a smoke detection system and a manual fire pole system, alarm system is going to basically offer the same amount of protection as a fully automated sprinkler system.
Okay. My last question is probably more for Kathleen. Do we have any other similar uses in town?
I think this use is pretty unique. What we're starting to see, though, is more of the experiential retailer, which is, really the trend in the way that retailing is going. You want to do something while you're buying something, and we are seeing more of that coming, which is a particular challenge in our spaces, and considering the way that our codes are written and what is being triggered. So in that way, there's similarities. There are obviously other liquor stores that have tasting, but it is not, I don't think that it is as similar in the experiential retail side of it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Alderman Swanson, then Alderman Kilberg.
My question is, the building is a 2-story building,
Correct.
and there's been no mention in the packet of what is on the second floor.
So currently, I think on the second floor is an IT company. The building owner is also here.
Networks, yes.
Networks, okay.
It's an office.
And does that factor in at all to any suppression system that we should have there, because we're protecting the people on the second floor as well?
So in the event that we install a smoke detector and a fire alarm system, that would be, I think, ideally tied into the upstairs as well, so that the whole building would be covered under the same system. So should an alarm be triggered, it would be activated throughout the whole building.
There's also mention that 10 people are going to be in the basement. I'm assuming that access to the basement is a little more difficult than the first floor. You're probably only going to have one exit. So my question is, number one, what are the people doing in the basement?
Yeah,
And then
good-
number two, will they be able to get out
Sure.
in the event of a disaster?
Good question. So, as I mentioned before, the way that the code reads in developing occupancy loads, you are basically assigning uses to various spaces, and then you're deriving from that and the square footage of those spaces the number of occupants. So in the basement, there isn't really any space in the code to say, well, it's not really going to be used unless somebody's making a delivery, and so it's just kind of a big open empty space. By indicating that it's kind of unprogrammed storage space, gives us a starting point for how to derive an occupant load. I don't believe that there would ever be a case where there would be actually 10 people down there unless there was, an extra large delivery or something of that sort. There certainly wouldn't be any events, and you're right in assuming that it would be restricted access only to shop staff or building owner related matters.
Okay. Given,
Can I add something about, I just wanted to add to your question on the office use?
Kathleen, can I trouble you just to speak
Sorry.
directly to the
I just
microphone?
wanted to add to your question on the office use. If the entire first floor went to an office use, it is unlikely that a sprinkler would be required for that use. So I just thought that's important when you're looking at potential for the coverage for the office.
understood, but now they are above an occupancy which has changed and triggered a different requirement. And I guess my next question would be for Chief Antonori, and that would be, do these situations or this use typically have a higher fire risk than other such in your years of experience?
Good evening. I'll try to answer that question the best I can.
For the benefit of those tuning in, Mr. Fire Marshal, if you could just share your name and title?
Dustin Schultze, Fire Marshal.
Thank you.
So your question was, could you please repeat your question?
Well, because we have a change in use with the assembly of people, is there a higher risk? I understand that we have now more people that we're trying to keep safe, but is there also a higher risk of fire because of the change in use, having more people assembling?
So each time a use is going to change, that's when the hazard's looked at. So in this case, yes, the hazard is changing on that first floor, which would change the hazard to the rest of the building. But by adding the things we talked about, it ups the protection of nothing that it has at this point. So it goes from a unalarmed, unsprinklered building to at least an alarmed building. So even though the hazard's going up, the protection for that second story occupant has also gone up.
Okay. I guess, I hear a lot about suppression, protection, these terms being thrown out. The agreement we have in front of us today, I don't see any suppression. I see early warning.
Early
To
notification.
get the fire department there quickly.
Correct. Early notification, either to get us there quickly and to get the visitors out
Okay.
quickly.
And I guess the code requires fire suppression for a reason.
Correct. When it's a change
And-
of use.
And,
Correct.
and so I would err on the side of caution, both from the people assembling there that we want to keep them safe. You have the people in the basement, you have the people on the second floor, and so it seems to me that we're not suppressing in any way, and the agreement we have before us, I don't see much in the way of fire protection. I see a little bit of delineation of the uses. I see requiring no food being prepared there, which is an obvious, could create a fire hazard. But other than that, all I see is early warning.
Yeah, no, I'd like to just to make a comment. Mike Antonori, Fire Chief. The occupancy that we've been looking at is 80+% mercantile and 20% assembly. So it's predominantly mercantile with a little bit of assembly. So the look at this, we feel that this is an adequate and acceptable risk mitigator by going to an alarm versus no alarm versus what the base code calls for assembly. So, and the code doesn't have it has mercantile and has assembly. It doesn't have the two mixed together. So this was a best face effort to find the best mitigation.
And maybe I can help clarify. I think what the code is speaking for, and please, I'm not the code official, so it's a life safety as opposed to property safety.
Right.
So what we're looking at is protecting, getting the people out of the building, not necessarily protecting the building. So when you talk about, is this a greater fire hazard, I think that's leaning more towards the property side, but even a suppression system is about getting people out
To save their lives.
to save their lives.
Right. It may not save all the property.
But if there is a higher fire risk, you're putting the people in more danger.
Right, and I don't know that that's the case here, and I think that's the question they haven't answered for you.
Correct, correct.
So what they're asking is, with this use, is there a higher fire risk because of what the use is? Not because the use has changed to assembly, but because of what they're doing. Is there any higher risk than any other mercantile building?
No, there's no additional risk of this being different than any other mercantile building that may or may not catch on fire.
And that's a helpful piece. And my final question, given that we're going to have now the alarm system in a bar scenario, will it be easily heard? I don't know how loud the music is going to be or how they're going to handle, obviously it'll be tied into the fire department, but you also are concerned with the people within the building.
First of all, we don't consider this a bar scenario, so that's one thing. Number two, the code is very specific on how loud the horns need to be, how visible they need to be, and all those are built into normal noise. So even in a factory setting, you can hear horns because they're designed for the occupancy.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Kilberg.
I guess I have a question for you then. Is this driven by economics, or is this driven by safety then? Are you saying that this is a more favorable approach as far as life safety?
No, it's an acceptable approach to life safety given the occupancy.
But, I mean, what's the nature of the request? The request is that this is a less costly approach toward life safety?
We didn't look at it from a cost standpoint, no.
Well, I mean,
From a fire standpoint.
Maybe.
Sure, I could respond to that. There is certainly a cost implication to installing an automatic sprinkler system. Given the age of the building, we'd need to be adding a secondary water line coming in, which would likely include tearing up State Street and redoing sidewalks, and would essentially be, depending on, working with loose numbers from previous projects, we've had to do something similar. Probably 30 to 50% of the build-out cost would then be going to the fire suppression system.
As far as insurance considerations, are sprinklers more favorable as far as insurance coverage, or are alarms more favorable?
I think it really depends. I'm not an insurance expert, so I can't really speak to that.
You're looking for coverage. If you had a sprinkler system, do you think it would reduce your insurance costs? Or do you feel as though alarms are going to be the more favorable approach or beneficial as far as insurance coverage? I guess I'm also considering, I'm I'm looking at Main Street, I'm looking at West Main, I'm looking at our business district, and you pointed out that the property that we're talking about this evening was built in 1861.
Mhm.
Are any of those types of materials used in construction today?
Well, certainly, it's a masonry building. You know,
I
it's
mean,
got,
it's a very dated building. We have common walls between all those buildings along West Main.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think that, from my perspective, as we looked at it 4 or 5 years ago, when previous chief visited with us about the importance of this ordinance, he more or less outlined to us as a council that our downtown has inherent risks as it relates to fire. And if fire would be, if we got into a serious fire, it could impact an entire city block. And there's a history of those types of fires in the state of Illinois. And when we discussed this ordinance 4 or 5 years ago, it really related to safeguarding our downtown and taking an approach moving forward that would ensure our downtown and all the businesses that are dependent upon their neighbors. And I guess that's my concern this evening. And these are things that I'm trying to weigh as we look forward. And is this the approach? Are we going to take incremental steps, or are we going to take a more comprehensive approach as it relates to fire safety on Main Street?
one thing I can speak to regarding that matter, we have done some selective demolition and investigation of doing the existing walls. And in both cases, it seems that it's either an 8-inch block wall, which would give us a 2-hour rating, even if it's not grouted solid, which it may well be because it is a bearing wall, or a double wide structural masonry wall, which would be a similar rating. Not knowing the exact construction of it, it's hard to say, but what I would typically see in a party wall, it's a pretty reasonable construction method in separating buildings along that street.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Bruno.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we're in we're acting as a unique body today. This question might be for council. Part of the cost for them to sprinkle has to do with bringing water to that building. Do we have latitude to speak to the costs for the city as to how we could get that building sprinkled?
For purposes of this hearing, you're sitting in a judicial position. Yours is a yes vote to grant or a no vote to deny the petition in its current existence. Alternatives are not within the confines, at least, and are not germane to the petition. Remember, this is an appeal, essentially a deviation from the city code. And as Mr. Finson said, you have to decide, is this equal to or better than what the code provides?
Thank you. Yeah, so given those limits, I'm eminently sympathetic to Alderman Kilberg's points on vulnerability, but I look at this particular use, everything that's in there that could generate a fire hazard or any increased fire hazard would be refrigeration, basically. It doesn't seem to have a higher fire risk than a clothing shop. I'd be hesitant to deny the appeal since it's not posing additional risk. Thank you.
Alderman Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, you just kind of hit on some of the things I was thinking about. Just for clarification again from the fire marshal to the chief. So this is, you don't perceive there being much of a greater fire risk from this use because this is a hybrid type situation. It's, you have retail or you have like a restaurant or a bar. There you've got the flames, you've got the kitchen working. There's a lot more potential for fire. Here, as Alderman Bruno said, it's probably like a refrigeration system is what would increase it, but it's marginal. Probably, so we're kind of wrestling with the fact of where retail's going right now, and where there's this strange kind of combination of things. So if there were a fire, there's more hazard because there's more people there.
It's a life safety
So,
issue,
right.
not a,
So it's not that there's a great, huge
because
increased
there's
risk
more
of
people
fire
doesn't mean
and
that's
that
gonna
the,
cause a fire, it's just,
okay.
the life safety, getting the people out of the building is addressed by the audible alarm system.
Yeah.
There's no inherently higher fire risk. And
Okay,
as such, no cooking, no microwaving,
right.
some of those bullet points are addressed specifically to that.
And as it stands now, there's nothing in that building at all.
It's an empty building right
Right.
now,
And in terms of fire suppression, prevention, any of that, I mean, it's right now, so this is arguably would make it safer and better, not only for this building, but to the point of if things were gonna catch, helping more buildings downtown. So, okay.
If I could just add one thing. So as far as, because this is mercantile with a little bit of assembly, if it was a straight mercantile business that was going in, it would be just a change of tenant permit. No other changes would be required of the building, and it would just continue as it is. So this being a little bit different, and our codes only address one hazard or the other, and because of the codes, you have to go to the more hazardous, and that's why we had to review it as an assembly, even though it's 80% mercantile. So that's where we were wrestling with, it looks more like this, but it has a small part of this, and because of that, you have to review it under these terms.
Right.
That's how the code's laid out.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if my next question is something I probably have to ask the attorney. So, given the nature of our downtown and the fact that this building is not unique in the fact that it is old, I wonder how often we're going to be getting hit with these types of appeals. It's, with the direction that retail is going and how things are becoming experiential and trend, as Kathleen has said, is this something where we need to be looking at our city code and making changes so that we can figure out how to handle this on a broader level?
Well, we will be. So
Okay.
again, to my same answer to Alderman Bruno, I'm sorry. The answer is yes, but for purposes of today and what we're dealing with, again, we have to deal with the petition and the appeal and the confine that it exists now. I do believe there will be an attempt to review the code on a macro level and maybe look at instances so that it's more applicable with current conditions. But for today, it's, you
Right.
grant the appeal or deny the appeal based on the evidence in front of you.
Very good. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Anyone else in the dais who has not yet spoken? Alderman Berghardt?
Dustin, for you, or Chief, so again, this was a winter board sports or winter sports retail shop. If it had become a children's clothing store, would have just been in there already, there wouldn't have been any requirement for a change in the fire notification. What if it became an office, or we've seen a move toward, personal fitness kind of facilities, so any kind of.
Office is easy, it's a lower,
It'd be the same hazard.
same as a mercantile, it would have been no change.
No change.
The
If a workout
fitness
facility or
place,
fitness.
that can it can go over to an assembly site depending on how many people are in the building.
This is for the chief, I guess. Is there anything in our, so we're talking about life safety here. Is there anything in our code that is encouraging us to try to save our historic structures through putting in fire sprinklers? Or, I think that's what we're all struggling with, is we see this as, we're thinking about property protection when we're really supposed to be thinking about life safety.
Well, again, the petition here, we're dealing with the code as it exists, and as the chief and the fire marshal have said, this is a hybrid situation. So the code is strictly written, it was denied by staff. There's a petition to basically appeal that based on what the petitioner says is equal to or better than. That's your determination. The other stuff, Alderman, is for another day. We're standing in a judicial, quasi-judicial position, and so it's a yes/no vote on the merits or lack thereof of the appeal as you see it.
I think the problem is the people who vote no on this are going to be voting no because they think sprinklers should be installed in this building, and it's hard to have that discussion if you can't.
With all due respect, that would not be within the confines of the appeal. The code is, you can say, I deny because I want to strictly adhere to the code as it exists. That is a absolute basis for denial. Because of some extraneous matter would probably not be a matter of record. So you're either going to say, yes, we think this is a hybrid situation, and that what the petitioner has offered is equal to or greater than, or deny and say it's not equal to or greater than. That's really the confines of the inquiry for today on this unique question.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alderman Marks. Chief, I guess the system that's going in, is that lights also that will flash? Is it horns only, I guess?
It'll be a automatic.
Chief, can I trouble you
I'm
to?
sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I forget. I can't wander. Italian side of me. It's a automatic fire alarm system based on smoke detection. There'll be audible alarms, there'll be the blinky lights, and there'll be a manual pull station. So it's a manual automatic. So if a fire starts in the middle of the night, the smoke detectors will go off, they'll alert the alarm company, will be dispatched, put the fire out. If there's a fire in the daytime, people can pull the alarm and preempt that and start it faster.
Okay, but there are lights if
There are, by code, for folks that cannot hear, you have to have strobes.
Okay.
And they're in the places where they'll see them, and they're very bright and obnoxious, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Alderman Ruby.
Not sure who this question is for. I'm just curious if there's any relevance to the March 1st date for the lease.
I put that in. Scott Finson, one of the city's attorneys. So when we were looking at this, part of the reason we do that is because, for example, there was discussion about the possibility that we might be changing, reviewing the actual fire code. And so what we didn't want to have is that this decision would hang out there sort of in perpetuity and that the facts and circumstances change. So we just put that in there arbitrarily, just so that there was an end date. And in fact, they already have a lease that they've entered into, and so that's the reason it's there.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on the dais who has not yet spoken or wishes to speak a second time? Alderman Clemens?
This one's real easy, just for absolute clarification. An aye vote in this grants the appeal, and a nay vote denies it. Is that correct?
It's a really good question. The answer for clarity is voting in the affirmative, an aye or yay is granting the appeal, a no or nay is denying the appeal.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Recording Secretary, when you have a moment, please take the roll. Everyone's clear with respect to the voting protocol? There you go.
Mike Bruno?
Aye.
Tara Burkhardt?
Aye.
Michael Clements?
Aye.
Becky Ruby?
Aye.
Dean Kilburg?
Aye.
Craig Maladra?
Aye.
Richard Marks?
Aye.
Robert Swanson?
Aye. The motion passes unanimously, ladies and gentlemen, with 8 affirmative votes, no nay votes, and 2 absent. Matter passes. I would entertain a motion to adjourn this Board of Appeals meeting. So moved. Alderman Marks makes the motion to adjourn. Alderman Clemmings makes the second. All in favor of adjourning this meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen.